Okay. Yeah. So I just looked at my feedback. I'll give you my feedback. Let's just start by understanding how you think the interview went, how you think your performance was.
I think I spoke a lot. I could have
Okay.
reduced what I spoke maybe because,
Okay.
sometimes brevity is the soul. I could have just hit the nail on the head and kept my mouth shut. I
Okay. Okay.
kept, running in circles. So
Right.
that was my opinion.
See, I think it was a very good interview, right? I think you performed very well, right? You have a lot of things working for you, right? Let's talk about your skills, right? See, your communication is amazing, right? You have amazing, excellent communication skills for somebody who's just 21 and who hasn't even started their career, who has no experience of a corporate world. You come across as somebody who's extremely professional, right? So that is a huge plus, right? And I don't say this to everyone. That's a huge plus. So definitely use that to your benefit,
Okay.
right? Think about this, right? They have your CAT scores, they have your profile. One of the main reasons they call you for a personal interview is they want to check on your communication.
Correct.
Right? They want to see how you're going to sort of like interact in the MBA college and case studies and group discussions. And when you go on to becoming a manager, do you have the required communication skills? So that's a very big parameter that they test, and you'll do wonderfully in that. Right? So that's great. Keep that up. Your profile is also pretty strong. Right, your economics background in terms of diversity will definitely be highlighted, right? Because you know the whole thing of like diversity in MBA and in the corporate world as well, which is there for a reason, right? It works. Diversity works. I'm a big fan of diversity. So your profile is amazing. Your scores are great, right? Economics as a background is a solid sort of field. You come from Xavier's, which is a great college, right? So all of that, use it to your benefit. Right? Which I think you're doing a good job because, like, for instance, tell me something about yourself, right? I think this was one of the better answers I've heard in a while, where you covered sort of your family background. You said you were from Xavier's. You spoke about your extracurricular activities. You mentioned the defense publication that you're working on. That was a great hook to throw in because you're clearly passionate about it. You've done some good work there. The moment you mention that, chances are they'll question you on that, which is a great thing. Which is actually, tell me something about yourself. It's all about throwing hooks at the panel, right? This is your chance to steer the interview in your direction.
Correct.
So it's always good. I tell candidates, don't worry about that question. You're lucky if this question comes up. If it doesn't, then you don't get a chance to steer it, right?
Correct.
So definitely throw that Indian military initiative that you've worked with. Definitely talk about your family, talk about Xavier's, talk about economics, talk about your academic background, right? That you've had sort of like a good academic background since 10th, 12th, and your undergraduate, and you're somebody who's been very academically inclined, throughout. The reason I'm saying this is because at the end of the day, these are academicians on the panel, professors who will appreciate the fact that you're academically inclined, right? So definitely that's great. I think, you mentioned that you're an avid reader. You read sort of like a diverse number of articles. All of that is good. Okay. Now, the only thing in tell me something about yourself is, and here I'm being very nitpicky. Remember, because when interviews are good, I have to be nitpicky and I have to sort of plug in those gaps, right? The thing is, chances are that the panel will interrupt you at times. Okay. So in the first 30 seconds of tell me something about yourself, make sure you cover the most important points. Okay. So I would say, talk about your Xavier's economics background. Talk about your academic inclination, that you have had a good track record, and that comes from the fact that you have an academically oriented family and you are somebody who's just inclined towards academics. And talk about the defense thing.
Okay.
I would say cover these points as a priority. Right, because it will be great if they pick up on the defense thing. And speak to you about that. It will be great if they pick up on economics because you're able to do a good job with economics as well, right? And the family angle just gives them a glimpse of who you are as an individual, right? See, the panel's also extremely bored of interviews. They conduct like interviews day in and day out. So give them interesting things that can sort of get them interested in you as an individual beyond your academics and beyond your work ex, right? So that's great. So prepare a 30-second elevator pitch, right, where you're covering the most important things. Of course, if you get more time than that, continue, right? You have your 45-second, 1 minute, more than a minute version ready, right? I think you spoke for about a minute and a half, which is great, but have that 30 to 45-second elevator pitch ready as well, in case they interrupt you.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So tell me something about yourself. That's the only thing that I want to talk about. Let's just go to So we spoke about the military initiative, right? I questioned you on that. That was great. You were able to give me statistics, which is always appreciated, right? See, it just goes on to show how involved you are. Right? You have the statistics on your fingertips. You said 3,000 unique visitors, 20 writers, 20 articles, 50 veterans, all of that. Great. So that's great. Then we spoke about how you can increase the unique visitors. What I liked about your answers is in a couple of instances, like for instance, when I said that, hey, 3,000 unique visitors is not a big thing, right? You acknowledged it, right? You said, yeah, I agree with that. It's not a big number, but this is what I've come to understand about this space. And this is how I plan to boost it, right? Where you spoke about the NGO affiliation and audiovisual to attract the millennials. So it's great. That just goes on to show that you're somebody who's sort of open to feedback, right? Acknowledgement is always great in an interview when you think it's justified. Right? Obviously, 3,000 unique visitors is not a big thing, right? So you acknowledge it upfront. Your DILR scores are not great, right? If somebody says, hey, you just scored 59, right, in DILR, that's really low, acknowledge it. Say, yeah, it is a low score, I acknowledge, but this is how I'm working towards fixing it. Right? A panel will really appreciate if you acknowledge legit counterpoints from them and coupled with saying that, hey, this is how I've been working on it, right? That's very important for them. I'm acknowledging my weakness, but I'm also telling you this is how I'm working towards it. And I'm getting better with every passing day.
Correct.
Right? So always keep that in mind. Your defense answers were really good. So all of that is great. Let's talk about economics. So economics, I think, you mentioned why you're interested in it. Which seemed okay. You said you chose it because of your principal. That's a legit college reason. And you also said that it's relevant. You found it relevant, the way it was taught and everything. That's great. What I would suggest is maybe try including a few things that you love about economics, right? See, your answer was, okay, my principal was a great teacher. It was very relevant to me. But let's get a little more specific. What excites you about economics?
Okay.
Right? And this is a question that you have to answer for yourself. Clearly, it does excite you, right? You've done well. I'm sure there are sections of economics, whether it is, I don't know, whether it's sort of like the visual representation or whether it is the core concepts of economics, right? Understanding how economies function. If you studied financial economics, understanding how companies function, businesses function, stuff like that. So get a little more specific there, right? Show your interest in economics.
Right.
Okay. Of course, when you show your interest in economics, the portions that you mentioned, they will question you on that. So make sure you're ready with those answers.
Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
GDP answers were great. I think, you were able to give me absolutely correct figures. In terms of 2020, you were able to explain why that shrank, what are the limitations of GDP, the peer example, all of that was good, right? On the peer front, I think, your answer was fair. You spoke about Bangladesh, Pakistan, China, and all of that. I would say maybe read up a little more about it in 2020, because that was a hot topic. Right. Definitely 23%, reduction is a huge flag. Right. And India actually did miserably as compared to their peers. But read up on that, get that data ready so that you can supplement that. When that peer example comes in saying, OK, I understand 23% was absolute terms was bad, but then it was bad for everyone. But even if we compare it with India's peers, we didn't do well as a country. Right. Okay. So definitely talk about that. Limitations of GDP, get more clarity on the double counting aspect that you mentioned.
Right. Yeah.
You spoke about double counting, right? Just make sure that, you understand that concept and are able to give examples, right? Okay. Because I immediately asked you for an example and it seems like you weren't sure. So make sure you get clarity on that. Okay. Budget highlights, great. Looks like you sort of followed the budget
Yes.
properly. You were able to explain it. I wanted to question you more on that, but I just decided not to because it sort of seemed to me that you were aware of that, right? As an economics major student, definitely it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It just happened. So they will talk about that, right? Okay, great. Let me see. So in the army, where was that? Yes. In the army discussion, I asked you about two things, right? Kind of sensitive questions. One, does the government use it for political mileage? You said, I have to acknowledge that, yes, to a certain extent, the government does use it for political mileage. And then you also gave the other side of how it has boosted the army. See, in these questions, these are tricky questions, right? Try to be as balanced as possible. You did a good job. I wouldn't change your answer. I'm not saying don't take a stand.
Okay.
Take a stand, right? Yes, you said that, okay, to a certain extent, I do think the government used it for political mileage, but on the same side, this is the positive, right? So what you're doing is you're taking a stand. You're not shying away from taking a stand, but you're doing that in a balanced way.
Okay.
As opposed to just coming out and saying, hey, you know what? I just think the Modi government just completely used it for political mileage. And I think it's atrocious that they did that. See, that might be your personal style. You might be left-leaning. You might be sort of opposed to the government. But just coming out with a vehement view like that might not go down well with the panel, right? For multiple reasons. One, they would think, she seems like someone who is a little arrogant and overconfident. How does she know so much about it that she's so sure, right? Does she have the data to back it up? Or worse, panelists might have opposing views and it might create a bias. Right. So great to take a stand, but take it in a very balanced way and deliver it very nicely, the way you did it. Okay. Second, also the defense question that I asked you, that there is a school of thought which says, why should we respect them? I think you handled it well, right? Again, you were balanced. You said, I acknowledge that, there is, why should we respect should not be given by default. But as a person, I'm somebody who would, like to respect them. And if somebody is coming with, has extreme views saying it's useless or AFSPA and all of that, they should come with like a reason, solid pointer. So I think that was good. So the takeaway here is take a stand if you have one, but deliver it nicely and give the other side as well, right? Because see, most of the times these issues are not black and white.
Right.
There is always a gray there, right? If you talk about farmers' protests now, right? That also will have gray areas, right? Just coming up with a stand saying, the farmers are completely right and the government is totally wrong, that might not go down well, right? If you ask me today, and if I were to answer that question, I would say, because I personally believe that I'm on the side of the farmers, right? So I would say, yes, the farmers have legit concerns. If such a huge community has legit concerns, and if they have, taken such a protest for so long, there's definitely merit in that. I think it would be great if the government can come, there's greater communication and transparency between the government and the farmers, right? And the government should understand that, if the farmers are sort of like protesting for such a long time, there is some merit. So instead of completely ignoring them and using very stringent measures against them, there should be a communication. Okay. So and the farmers should also attempt to understand the laws properly, right? So something like that, right?
Got it.
Okay, great. So that's all done. Economics, we spoke about that. Organization structure, I think that was fine. Said it was kind of dry and but you still did well, so that's okay. GDP was all okay. This is budget highlights were done. Okay. Why MBA? I think the way you supplemented, the way you sort of explained why you want to do human resources, I think it's good enough, right? You seem to have a good idea of what human resources is, rather than just saying, hey, I like people interaction, that's why I'm doing human resources, right? Which is the standard answer you get to here. When I was 21, I'm still interested in human resources, although I didn't sort of get into it. But when I was 21, I thought that's what HR was all about, and I want to get into it because of that. But HR is much more beyond that, right? As you said, restructuring, 360-degree feedback. It's a lot of policy drafting, right? It's a lot of admin when it comes to recruitment. So remember that as well. So I think you have a good handle of that. So that's fine. Can work in admin roles. Yeah, I think the public-private partnership, you were able to explain it well. You linked it with the veteran thing, which was great. Yeah, one thing that I would suggest is read up more about HR, right? You know quite a bit, right? But read up more. See, I'll tell you what, a candidate like you who has a lot of things working for you, right? They will try to find loopholes. Okay. So, it's one of those cases where, you know how GMAT is, right? GMAT is an adaptive testing format.
Test. If
right?
it's more difficult,
It gets more and more difficult. With interviews also it happens.
Okay.
They see your profile, they see a video, they already have their expectations sort of at a high level. Your questions are going to be complex.
Correct.
As opposed to a candidate who doesn't come with that kind of background.
Right.
So read up more about HR, right? You already have a good answer. I would say if you read up more, pull up IMT Ghaziabad or any other institute, look up the subjects that fall under HR, right? Read up more about different companies that have great HR practices. I don't know if you've done your research, but I used to work for Google. I was there for like a long time. So Google is one of the great companies, right? They have an amazing HR team and HR policies. Maybe read up about that, right? So you can sort of mention that as well, So yeah, just try to get more domain knowledge. Although you're doing well on that front, I would just say amp it up. Yeah.
So just a question, by this you mean more like practical example sort of thing, right? Under HR, because when you asked me about, I didn't know about the admin policy part when you mentioned that. It was new to me. So that's more on the subject line. So what would you suggest? Do I read more theory or do I get like Google type examples like you mentioned?
I would say, see, okay, let's break this down. So I would say one, definitely under components of HR, right? Like for instance, you spoke about 360-degree feedback,
total quality management
and all of that, right? So go a little deeper on that restructuring, go a little deeper on that and understand what are the different components of HR, right? So that you can get, if you look at the list of topics or subjects that come under an HR MBA, that will give you a fair bit of an idea of what it entails, right? It also has a labor law part and all of that labor union side of it that also comes in. So read up more. That's number one. Second, watch YouTube videos, right, of HR people, actual HR executives explaining what HR is all about.
Okay.
Right. So if you know somebody who's in the HR domain, definitely talk to them. But of course, that's difficult. But look up YouTube videos. I'm sure you'll find great YouTube videos of HR executives actually explaining what HR is all about. Right. So that will give you a clear-cut idea of the practical thing. And then maybe read up a little bit about Google and its HR policies. I would say pick Google. That's one. And on the opposing side, you can pick Amazon.
Yeah. I did a case study on that.
Yeah. They seem to have very different approaches to HR.
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
So you can get both the sides, right? And you can understand, right? Both are very successful companies, right? But while Google is very employee-friendly, Amazon is all about business and all about revenue and profits and all of that. So read up on that, okay? But that said, what you have right now is good, but you can amp it up. Great. Okay. Now the question was, why didn't you take up a job, right? Why did you sort of decide to invest time in CAT preparation? Why would I choose you over somebody, who has a lot of work experience along with CAT prep? See, you can expect this question to come your way. Because the reality is there are candidates who have stressful jobs and still sort of, manage to do well in CAT. I like the fact that you mentioned that, hey, listen, being from an arts background, quant and logic were not my strongest points, right? So I had to invest extra in that, right? Which is legit, because while verbal is something that you can't really develop in 6 months, right? Quant and DLR, you have to sit down and study those topics.
Correct.
Right? There is a curriculum that you have to cover in quant, especially quant. So that's fine. You can mention that reason. I think that's a good reason. Second is you should stress on the fact that while you didn't have full-time work experience, you did invest a lot of time in your publication, which you did, right? I would say upfront do that. I sort of acknowledge the fact that I didn't I don't have full-time work experience, but I did this. Very passionate about it, and it did require a lot of effort from my side. So I was juggling that with my CAT prep, right? Also mention the fact that you were looking for, as you said, right? You didn't sit for college placements because you wanted an HR role. I like the fact that you mentioned that, if you take up an MBA, the options that are thrown in front of you, just become broader. And it's true, actually, getting an HR role without an MBA or without a specialization is difficult. So it's true. So you can mention that, right? That you were eligible for college placements, but you wanted to take up an HR role. The roles that were coming in were not to your liking, and you were you're very inclined towards HR. So that's why you didn't sit for them. Then my question was, why didn't you look for a job outside? Right? So you can say, instead of saying that, I did look for it, but in a half-hearted way, don't say that. Say that, considering that the pandemic was on, the COVID situation, and the fact that I realized that it's difficult to get a meaty or a substantial HR role with the kind of background that I have, I made a conscious decision of investing in the defense publication article and preparing for CAT.
Okay.
Just say that. Don't say that half-hearted job search. No need to bring that up, right? Say that, it was a conscious decision on your part. Two things. One, you invested in defense publication. And second, you prepared for CAT because quant was difficult for you. Right? Okay, so let's do that. Why would you choose freshers over work experience? Your answer was fine. That's the only way to go about this answer. You presented it very well, right? You come with a clean slate, you will mold it and stuff like that. And I also say that, as an individual, fine, I agreed that you don't have, on paper, you don't have full-time work experience, but you do have a lot of experience on the side of running a defense, that publication. You have, when I was reading your profile, there were a number of projects that you did, right?
Research.
Exactly. So talk about that. So, I understand I don't have work experience, but I do have this. Of course, it's not the same thing, but it did give me exposure to a lot of different skill sets, which will give me an edge over the other candidates that are probably coming in with work experience as well.
Okay.
So that's what you bring to the table, right?
No. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Challenges of working in a team or people challenges. Now, this is where, Nivedha, you'll have to be a little careful, and I'll tell you why. See, with candidates like you, right, who are coming with a very strong profile, who have great communication skills and come across as assertive and confident, right? You do come across as somebody who's very confident and assertive, right? Now, what happens is there can be some panelists, because of biases and because of how they perceive things, they might pick up a little bit of arrogance, right? They might think, I wonder if this candidate is a little arrogant, right? She's from Xavier's. She has a great academic background. She's lived in Bombay. Is she coming in with a certain level of arrogance, right? Okay. So watch out for that, right? Now, for instance, when we spoke about people challenges, right? You said, okay, fine, this was a confusion, this was a communication issue that I had, and I had to step in because I had to prioritize the interview, and my teammate didn't take that well, okay? So when I asked you, how could you have done that better? A statement that you made is, I could have been direct, right? And I could have told her that, hey, you're not good, and let me step in and let's see who's better. Okay. Now, you might not have meant that, but what happens is, what you're saying is, I could have handled it in a direct way, and this is how I would have handled it. You would never pit yourself against the person. You would never say, let me step in and let me say who's better. You can say, I could have been direct with her, a bit more direct than I was. But, at that time, the situation was a little tricky, and I don't think a direct approach was better. So I sugarcoated it, and probably that's why my message got diluted. Okay. Right? Don't put the angle of, I could have said this in a direct way. That statement will not go well. Okay. And acknowledge. So when they say that, what could you have done better? Acknowledge upfront, say, I think my tone could have been better in the heat of the moment. And I think I will attribute this to a little bit of a sort of, I'm sort of in my early stages, and no, let's not say that. Let's not bring that in. Let's say in the heat of the moment,
Okay.
we was really focused on getting that project delivered. It was a very crucial interview for us with the person that you mentioned. So in the heat of the moment, I think my tone went a little off. So in hindsight, I could have used a much better tone, and that could have made the situation better.
Okay. No pitting against each other is.
Don't say that. Yeah, don't say that. When I saw your video and everything, and I saw your profile, I did sort of come with the mindset. Let me see if she has had people-related challenges. Let me see if she acknowledges the fact that, hey, my score in CAT is not great, or whatever is not great. That's why I asked you that 3,000 unique visitors as well. I wanted to see how open you are to sort of like criticism, right? Which interestingly came back later as well. You did a good job. You acknowledged it, right? So keep that in mind, right? If you're mentioning there's such a challenge, say it's okay to say that. Yeah, I think what I could have done better from my part is that my tone could have been a little better. I've learned from that experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Say that. So that'll just show them that, hey, you're open to feedback and criticism, which you said that is a minor weakness.
Yeah.
Right? So say that. I think it will go well with your assertive and confident personality. Okay.
Right.
Weakness, I think, time management issue, prioritization is fine. Thank God you didn't give me weaknesses like, oh, I'm a perfectionist or I work too hard and all of that. I think you were very honest in saying that you want to be better at handling criticism, right? And you also said it's a mild weakness, so it's fine, right? You said that I do sort of accept it, but internally it does trouble me. But I need to sort of take it more positively and take it as a learning experience, especially because I'm in the early stages and there's so much for me to learn.
Correct.
Right? Put that.
Add stuff like that. Yeah.
Add that in. Okay. So I think that's fine. Okay. Leadership examples. Yeah, that's it. That's it from my side.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have one question. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
At any point in the interview, did you feel like I didn't? I ended my answer too quickly, and you were waiting for more?
No. In fact, I thought you gave very detailed answers. Right, which was good. But be prepared that there will be impatient panelists,
right,
or overworked in terms of interviewing panelists who will interrupt you. So that's fine, right? Remember your IIM Ahmedabad experience. Don't get bothered by interruption, right? Correct. Let them interrupt you. It's okay, right? And also one thing. Sorry, I'm diverting, but when I asked you, I think there was somewhere you asked me for a minute to think about. What was that?
For the I'll tell you so much. People's problem only.
People's problem. Exactly. That's a good strategy. In case of questions like this, where they tell you to sort of go down memory lane and think, right? Not really fact-based questions. It's good to ask for time.
Okay.
Right? It's good to ask for time and gather your thoughts. In fact, you asked for a minute and you came back too quickly. Take that time.
Okay.
Take that 45 seconds, minute, gather your thoughts, come back. If they throw an analytical question at you, just because they say, oh, your DLR is low, let me test her on like a puzzle or whatever. Take a minute. Say, can I get a minute to think about it? Take that, use that time and come back in a structured way.
Okay.
That's a good thing. But yeah, to answer your question, no, I didn't feel that you were cutting short at any point in time. I think that was perfectly fine.
Okay. Just one last thing. So when you asked me do you have a question for the panel? So I thought I should ask you something, like ask the panel about a particular course or a particular thing at IIM.
Right.
But I also read something on the internet which said that will come off as too, you're trying too hard. So should I or should I not do that?
What was your question? Like, what would be a question that you would ask?
If I go through the website and if there's, a particular club which looks interesting or some, project course or something at IIM, then I can ask them for a few more details. So could you tell me more about this? Or so what does this do?
Yeah. So see, I'll tell you what. Again, this kind of question is a little tricky. And if you, even Rajesh and Bharat, their advice is that if you're completely sure about the question, ask it. Otherwise, it's absolutely fine to say, hey, I don't have a question. Okay. Right? No minus marks for not asking a question. What you can do is, I would say, don't ask about a club or extracurricular. If you have an academic project, let's say if you look up IMT or Symbiosis and you see an HR project that seems interesting to you and you want to know more about it, ask about that.
Okay.
Right? I wouldn't say don't go into the realm of extracurricular activities because there's no point. You don't come across as a non-serious candidate, but with candidates who are a little non-serious, their risk is, this person is just interested in clubs. The person doesn't seem like interested in academics, right? So I would say if you're picking something, pick academic and something which is related to HR or the stuff that you're interested in. That will go well. That will go well.
Or just say no questions. That is
just say no. Just say no. That's totally fine. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for you were very engaging while taking the interview. So definitely.
No worries at all. No worries. All the best and keep me posted on how this goes.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Thank you,
great.
sir.
Take care. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.